they've picked a jury already. We have the same prosecutor who was the prosecutor in the George Zimmerman, Trayvon Martin case, same special prosecutor who initiated those proceedings. What can they do differently, or hopefully they've done differently this time, to pick a jury that would be more receptive to perhaps the defense, not the defense, to the prosecution in this case than they were the last time around?
Yeah, well, apparently you want to stay away from white, middle-aged women because they clearly didn't play out right with Trayvon Martin. So I don't know what the makeup of this jury is. I would imagine they want to try something maybe a little bit different, try and get more African Americans onto the jury.
Oh, and by the way, this jury is also being sequestered.
Back to the jury, I think the other thing that's extremely important is probably trying to find jurors who do not have strong positions in favor of people being able to carry around guns. You'll remember in the last, the George Zimmerman trial, several of the jurors either had carried guns before or had husbands or friends who carried concealed weapons. So it was a right that was very important to them, and they wanted to protect that right, which I believe created a bias in favor of George Zimmerman, because if they were to find that George Zimmerman, for example, or Michael Dunn in this case, had used a firearm irresponsibly, in a homicidal way, then obviously they'd have to say that perhaps there should be more gun control. Perhaps we should relook at these gun laws and try and restrict people from carrying guns. And these jurors in the George Zimmerman case clearly didn't want that.
The other thing I think is interesting in this case in particular is that the daughter has struck a different mood than the family of George Zimmerman. The daughter of Michael Dunn has said that it's a horrible tragedy and has acknowledged that a 17-year-old boy had been killed here and that this is horrible every which way. Do you think that even though the jury is sequestered, that by taking sort of a softer tone here, this might be helpful to the defense in this case? Because we really did, from Zimmerman, there was no contrition. In fact, his family was tweeting quite the opposite prior to the trial beginning.
The defense is very different. They're in a very different position in this case because unlike Trayvon Martin, the victim here, Jordan Davis, was a good student. He had never been in trouble before. He was apparently on his way to college, wanted to go to the military. There were no weapons found in the car, no injuries on Michael Dunn. So they have to take a much more sensitive approach. No weapons found in the car. So there virtually is nothing that makes it look like Jordan Davis was the kind of kid who would have in fact attempted to kill or cause real harm to Michael Dunn. And so you have to be sensitive to that. The Zimmerman family in the last case, along with Zimmerman's attorneys, had a real field day because Trayvon Martin had these posts on Facebook, photographs of himself with a gun. He looked like a more violent kid from a stereotypical standpoint. He had been suspended from school. There was drug use. There were just these situations that made him more easily attacked than I think Jordan Davis is, who, by all accounts, was a really good kid.
Now, let me ask you about using a self-defense claim. Basically, we have Michael Dunn claiming that he saw a gun, and that's going to be his self-defense claim. And as it turned out, there was no gun. Is that a claim that you can really credibly assert that you've seen work in instances like this? If you think you saw somebody and you think that you were in fear for your life, is that sufficient for you to make a successful self-defense case?
It can be. I mean, here the case rises and falls on Michael Dunn's credibility. I think here it's going to be almost impossible for him not to testify, because you'll also remember in George Zimmerman's case, there were residents from the apartment complex who apparently came out and saw what looked like self-defense, and then there were injuries on George Zimmerman that were consistent with him perhaps being beat up and that he was defending himself. Here, everything has to do with Michael Dunn's state of mind. And so there is something in the law, at least in California, I don't practice law in Florida, but I imagine it might be similar, which says that you can have a true and reasonable but inaccurate belief that you are in danger, and that still applies, that could apply to self-defense. Now, usually that gets you a lesser included offense of some type of manslaughter charge if you have a reasonable but incorrect belief. that you're protecting yourself or others. It generally is not an absolute defense, it's an imperfect defense, but it is available here. That if a jury is sympathetic to Michael Dunn, and again, this is where we look at the jurors and the types of people they are and what their interests are. And again, if you have a lot of jurors that have a strong bias in favor of citizens being able to carry concealed weapons, they are going to try very hard to acquit this man, because they want to support those laws and they want to behave as if those laws are being used responsibly by the citizens. So it's going to hurt them. Hurt the case. So but if they're sympathetic to him and they listen to him, and he does well on the stand, he could win this case. Absolutely.